Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience, and also the webpage with the same name. This week, we have some stuff going down, and I want to break this down for all of us. As we all know and have been hearing, um, lots of astrologers talking about it. Pluto is going to re-enter the sign of Aquarius on Saturday, January 20th, here in the United States and other places in the world. It could be the 21st. But leading up to that, there are quite a few energies that I want to talk about because this really, if you recall last year, in 2023, Pluto entered the sign of Aquarius, and it was ruled by Uranus and Taurus, just like it will be now. But it went in for 3 months, and it gave us some objectivity. There were quite a few things that happened within the news, especially like ChatGPT, kind of these Aquarian dynamics. And I'm going to get more into what Pluto and Aquarius can reflect in a minute, but whenever Pluto retrograded back into the sign of Capricorn, it was a time to do some deep inner reflection, as it was hitting like the anaretic degree and really wanting us to expose all of these types of internal structures within ourselves, within our consciousness on a collective level. We were seeing all types of social constructs, structures, everything getting exposed for what they really were. And the collective is really reflecting things that can go on inside of us, meaning that there were things about how we've structured our reality stemming from our conditioning, that we are supposed to reflect on and really gain wisdom from, and to understand how that affected us on a personal level. And then now, later on in this week, we are going to have Pluto enter the sign of Aquarius, where it's going to be ruled by Uranus and Taurus yet again. And Uranus and Taurus has really been about this radical transformation of our relationship to self. The relationship to self is this Taurus piece. The radical transformation is the Uranian piece. Uranus is really about liberating from conditioning. It's really about rebelling against your own status quo of what you've known, the known and the familiar, the way of being, the way we structured reality. So Pluto's going to do this dance this year again. It's going to retrograde in May on the 1st, and then it's going to return to Capricorn on September 1st here in the United States, the 2nd in other places over the world. And then it's going to go direct October 12th, and then it's going to re-enter Aquarius on November 19th. So there's this back and forth dance of the need to objectify Uranus, Aquarius as a way to liberate ourselves from conditioning. And then it's going to go back into Capricorn, where it's going to be ruled by Saturn and Pisces, where we're needing to reflect on, just all types of man-made social constructs and our conditioning as a way to wrap up this cycle, to dissolve the old way of structuring reality on a collective level and on a personal level. And then it's going to go back into Pluto. Pluto's going to go back into Aquarius at the end of the year, where it will be for the long haul throughout 2025 until 44. So for 20 years, it's going to be hanging out in the sign of Aquarius. So it's this immense amount of pressure this next year of doing this Plutonian dance between needing to understand what it is that has conditioned us and how we've structured reality, experiencing feeling disillusioned by the things that we have bought into on a collective level, Saturn and Pisces, the need to end this whole cycle of how we've structured reality, and then understanding and objectifying that content that we come to understand and gain through the wisdom of reflection with Pluto and Capricorn. And then to now look at, well, what do we value? What do we need, Taurus? How can we transform this need within ourselves, this need within the collective, Aquarius? And it's really about changing our inner vibration and magnetism through doing our personal work, really reflecting and objectifying everything that comes up as a way to have this liberation process and to remember to pull in the polarity of Pluto in Aquarius, which is Leo, to make sure that we're not just staying in our mind, but we're tapping into our heart space and what feels like self-love. How can you create an act of self-love that helps you self-actualize your purpose, what you came here to do? It's really important to remember, if you're someone who believes in reincarnation or understands this truth, that we have chosen to be here at this specific time right now for specific reasons and purposes. And so to really pay attention to what is going on. Pluto in Aquarius, the last time it was here, a big transit, was right after America became America. Its transit through Aquarius was 1778 to 1798. And within that time frame, we can reflect right now and see maybe some of the stuff that is going to come up during this Pluto and Aquarius transit. So back in 1778 through 1798, we had the American Revolution. We had the French Revolution. We had the Indian Wars here in America. We had the Constitutional Convention in order to ratify and amend the Constitution of the United States, which is really important for looking at what's going on in the world right now and how our constitutional rights could be coming up again. We're looking at how there was these natural disasters, trauma, right, which corresponds with Aquarius that came up. So there was, the Great New Orleans fire. There were multiple earthquakes throughout the world that, yes, there were some in Japan. There was, oh gosh, there was even one on the East Coast, and there was one in New Jersey during this time period, which was like really unheard of. But the big earthquakes, I have this listed. I wrote down a bunch of stuff that happened on the written forecast for you guys. But the earthquakes that happened, yes, they ended life, but what happened because of them was that famine started, so it ended even more life. So it's these big collective traumas, which speaks to the Uranus and Aquarius function. And they were of natural disasters and then revolutionary wars. And then there was also the William Herschel discovered Uranus during Pluto and Aquarius. And then he went on to discover that Uranus and Saturn both had moons. There were these intense scientific discoveries. There was the First National Bank of America was founded. There was the American Treasury was founded during this time period. There was the hot air balloon was invented. And so there's all of these types of science, revolution, revolutionary thinking, trauma, um, and then also astronomy, which is part of Aquarius as well. I loved thinking about the hot air balloon because Aquarius speaks to the atmosphere, so being able to fly. Um, but there was also a sense of community that came together through these big revolutionary ordeals or traumas. There was a sense of collective community, of wanting to put differences aside, um, in certain groups and wanting to come together to help each other out, to help humanity. Right now, we're in a global crisis with how we treat the world. Gaia, and that's really indicative of Uranus being in Taurus, Taurus speaking to the land, to Earth. So there's a lot that can come up that can actually bring community together. Me, Raja Hall, and Stacey Pizzura are doing a video actually tomorrow, so it'll be out either tomorrow or the next day, I'm sure, where we're going over Pluto this year and the transits. So I want you guys to be on a lookout for that because we'll do a deeper dive into what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to speak just a little bit to just kiss that just a little bit. But what I really want to talk about is the energetics building up to this Pluto in Aquarius on the 20th that will also be conjunct the sun. Right after the sun moves into Aquarius, then Pluto will move into Aquarius. So it's like the sun and Pluto meet at 29 degrees Capricorn, and then they both enter the sign of Aquarius together. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about what's building up to this. This week feels like the passing of the baton a little bit. There's a lot of these energetics of you're a runner, you've been racing, you've been doing all of this work, this kind of Capricornian work, and now it's time to do some Aquarian work. And so you pass the baton to your teammate because your teammate's helping facilitate this. Only in this situation, you would be passing the baton to yourself, if that makes sense. But it's about changing gears just a little bit and taking the information that we've been learning as a way to catapult or to slingshot, right? To anytime Aquarius, Uranus is involved, there is a propensity to be able to evolve more rapidly because it has an individuating function of bringing objectivity, the ability to really objectify oneself, to kind of view oneself, you know, as if you're in a box and you're looking in. And that way you can be able to understand what's going on as a way to create this liberation. So on the 15th, and all of this stuff is going to be felt throughout the week. I'm going to say the days that they are happening or that they're you know, really taking effect, but this will all be felt during and throughout this week and during this Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius transit. So on the 15th, Venus in the sign of Sagittarius was in conjunct Uranus. This happened while Venus was trining the North Node. So the trine is a disseminating phase between Venus and the North Node. Uranus in conjunct Venus. Uranus is ruled by Venus. Venus in the sign of Sagittarius is really wanting us to expand upon our own personal truths, of our own inner knowing, of, you know, this is a transit for some where they're really understanding what gives them meaning in life, because they're adopting some type of philosophical viewpoint that could be new, or if it's not new, they're expanding upon it and they're understanding it and being able to apply it in a broader context to themselves, to their relationship with themselves. But the inconjunct from Venus to Uranus, and Uranus being in Taurus, retrograde, is really about objectifying how what we believe, Sagittarius, creates meaning in our life, and what that meaning, how that affects our values and our own needs that are personal to our relationship to ourselves. And the need here is to really be able to self-improve, like paying attention to how does this affect the way that you talk to yourself, seeing how this is Taurus. Are some of the beliefs that you have about yourself needing to be objectified in order to liberate from? Is this affecting your sense of self-worth or sense of self-esteem? These are kind of Taurus dynamics. And then if you understand that, to self-improve through understanding that, now there's kind of space that's created for you to expand upon, well, what does give you meaning? What do you feel is true? What do you believe? What do you believe about yourself? What do you feel like is true for yourself? All of these dynamics. There can be instances, seeing as Uranus is still retrograde, where we're having a thought about something that is repetitive, and we're realizing how that impacts our relationship to ourselves, whether it be negative or positive. So there can be this intuitiveness that comes through, though, about something that you're wanting to know about, especially regarding your inner relationship to yourself. And then through the disseminating trine from Venus to the North Node in Aries, it's really interesting because this is kind of that passing the baton moment. Since the South Node is in Libra and is ruled by Venus, there have been a lot of relational dynamics coming up for so many people. I feel like I'm talking about it all the time. And that's because this is really wanting to, be evolved. There's like some exposing that wants to be done about the imbalances that have been created stemming from how we've been conditioned, or what we believe about ourselves, or our ideals around what relationships and partnerships should look like, or friendships. And so we've come to an awareness, since Pluto has been in Capricorn, through self-reflection, deep self-reflection on these dynamics. And now, just before Pluto enters the sign of Aquarius, the South Node's ruler is in conjunct Uranus while trining the North Node in Aries. And so it's like this taste of what's to come, how we're working with this energy on a personal level, the need to really understand what our own personal philosophy of life is, as opposed to what's been conditioned. And as we understand this and we liberate from the old way of being, the old way of knowing, the old way of structuring, the old way of valuing or needing, or any of these things, we then get to deepen our awareness through an expansive process, Venus and Sagittarius, and then we get to apply that now as a way to facilitate a new kind of cycle that's wanting to come underway. It's not there quite yet. We haven't reached it, but we're starting to do the groundwork and lay the foundation for this new state of becoming that we're really in right now. It's like the caterpillar in the cocoon about to break free, right? That's part of this Venus trine the North Node. It's really interesting too, because the North Node is ruled by Mars in Capricorn, and it's also in a disseminating trine to Venus's ruler, Jupiter. and the sign of Taurus. So to me, this is really helping us through this expansive process of like this journey to know oneself fully and authentically and naturally. We're now starting to be able to act on the desires to put this into place, to take the like to shape new foundations as we release the old. And that is really what I see with both of the facilitators of Venus and that North Node in a direct conversation with each other. That there's an ease of self-determination for this process of expansion, of knowing who one naturally is right now, as opposed to the more conditioned issues. You know, going back to this nodal axis with Pluto and Capricorn, it's like all of us with all of these parental issues have, I've seen so many people talking about how they're coming to realize that they have projected expectations stemming from not being seen when they were younger by their parents and doing what their parents wanted them to do instead of living in their own natural authenticity. And it's like this is a time period of giving ourselves permission to do so. Like that permission has always been there, but we've been so conditioned that it's like we've forgotten or disconnected from it. And so this is also more of that kind of energy of how do we reparent ourselves? How do we emotionally mature? This is part of Mars and Capricorn. How do we be responsible with our actions that we take? Are we being integral to ourselves? You know, through living in our personal truths, or are we maybe getting into overcompensatory behavior? So a lot of this can be revealed this week in order for us to liberate from it, in order for us to, at the very least, become aware of some of these dynamics. And I mean, this runs the gamut. There can be so many other things coming up. For some, it can be about having traumatic triggers happen externally as a way to get one to objectify the feelings and the emotional dynamics so that there can be an understanding of what was true and what wasn't. How maybe through traumatic events we took on untruths that were projected or that became crystallized within us stemming from that traumatic event and how it affected our relationship to ourselves. And now really wanting to expand upon this process of journeying back into understanding our own natural authenticity and natural authority. So some of this can be coming up. It's really interesting to think about this as well. I love looking at planetary nodes. I've talked about it somewhat on here. I've also gotten really good feedback from some of you guys about wanting to hear more about it. So on the 16th, and this is definitely still tracking this week, throughout this week, but the south node of Venus, since Venus is the ruler of the south node right now in Libra, Venus is now in, Sagittarius. So we're looking at projected expectations, projected needs, how our beliefs shape this. Does this feel authentic? Maybe you're someone who's been masking who you are, because you've been taught to hide who you are. There's these kind of Libra functions of masking. And then that's also part of an inauthenticity piece that could be happening for some others. But that was really generalized, but to just kind of drive home some of these points. Venus is ruled by Jupiter right now, and Jupiter is in mutual reception with Venus. So we know that not only is Venus a really important piece of the puzzle this week, seeing as she is the ruler of the South Node, the ruler of Jupiter, the ruler of Uranus, but there have been old dynamics coming up revolving around our relationships that we're needing to understand more in depth and to expand upon this process that we're in as a way to learn more balance and harmony, and then to stay whole unto ourselves through this process, right? That would be very authentic in nature to be able to do that. If you're already able to do that, kudos to you. Some people aren't, and they're learning this. But the south node of Venus is in Capricorn, and on the 16th, conjuncts Mars in the sign of Capricorn. So that south node of Venus and Mars are ruled by Saturn and Pisces. And so we can see that a lot of the old dynamics that have been surfacing, that have created imbalances and have gotten us away from our own personal truths, are correlated to our conditioning, and there are desires, Mars, on a soul level, that are wanting us to have an emotional maturation process through dissolving these old structures of a conditioned variety that have conditioned how we've done relationships, how we are able to maintain our sense of autonomy or not in relationships. And the need to really self-reflect on our relational dynamics this week is huge with that south node of Venus conjunct Mars and Capricorn, because this can offer forgiveness, but this can also help us to continue this expansion process. The other dynamic, since Venus is ruled by Jupiter and Jupiter is in Taurus at this time, is this is really about getting back to our authenticity, right? And the north node of Jupiter is sitting across the sky, opposing Mars and that south node of Venus. So we're wanting to throw off old conditioning and to understand our personal truths, Jupiter, Taurus, as a way to emotionally validate ourselves. North node of Jupiter in Cancer, to be able to create a sense of security, of knowing the inner home within. And so this is a really important piece that can be coming up for people this week. This also happens as the moon is in Aries. So it's like this new identity is wanting to come through, this new way of becoming, this new state of becoming on an emotional level that pertains to our relationship with ourselves, and how on a collective level we're wanting to transform our relationships through values and needs, but on personal levels really wanting to investigate, what do I need, what do I want, what feels true, what feels authentic, what feels like it nurtures me. Have I externalized something? How do I become what I need? There's a lot of lessons this week with these energies that revolve around, as we do this work, the clearer it becomes that what we value and what we need is what we need to become. So if you're someone who has been in relationships and maybe they've been a bit toxic, there could be a need to really look at the why and to see if you're projecting needs instead of being able to meet your own needs. I had a client come in, a little bit ago, who was just talking about everything that they wanted in a partner, and they were really more all kind of projected needs. And I had asked them, what would happen if you became what you needed? And they were like, well, I wouldn't need a partner. And I was like, and I think that that's the moral here, is like, we don't necessarily need a partner unless it's going to facilitate our own evolutionary growth. In order to change our inner vibration, Uranus and Taurus, we have to become self-reliant and be able to meet our own needs first and foremost. and to value ourselves. That way we can vibrate on such a level that we call in the right people instead of the people that continuously throw us back in on ourselves because we haven't been able to actualize whatever dynamic is being projected onto the situation. So this is a week where a lot of this stuff can come up that teaches us this lesson and emotional maturation on some type of level. For others, just stuff with family can be coming up, recalling things and having aha moments or an intuition about things. We're really supposed to be following this because there's a lot of disseminating energy that helps bring clarity, but also is really saying to us that it needs to be integrated and actualized, so lived out in the here and now, not just thought about or talked about. So on the 17th, Saturn in Pisces is going to be in a last quarter sextile to Mercury in Capricorn. And a last quarter sextile is an interesting phenomenon. On the one hand, it speaks to you've been doing this or started to do the groundwork on this, but there can be a fear of moving forward and a fear of throwing off what needs to be thrown off. So there can be this propensity to actually want to go back to the past because it feels more secure. Maybe you've been trying to get sober and all of a sudden you kind of fall off the wagon. There can be this, what they call in AA stinking thinking around. It's kind of like where when you mess up, you feel like everything's null and void and you've got to start all over again. But Saturn in Pisces really speaks to it pulls in the polarity of Virgo, that the values and the effort, as long as you have like this sincere intention to learn, to continue to learn about the why and our conditioning around how we've structured things, that would be Mercury and Capricorn being ruled by Saturn and Pisces, which it's in this sextile with. It's like it keeps moving you forward and you learn a little bit even if you mess up. Like imperfection is actually a good thing because it teaches you even more. If everything was perfect all the time, there really wouldn't be any growth. So for others, this can be about really understanding what needs to be released, but a fear around it. And if that's you, you can really take this Mercury and Capricorn that's ruled by the Saturn and Pisces and use it to be self-determined in your own growth, meaning that I'm going to learn new ways of how to structure whatever it is that I'm needing to restructure right now on an internal level. It's a very internalized energy. Because it's the last quarter phase, Dane Rudyard talks about how it's a crisis in consciousness, and then Jeffrey Wolf Green says that's simply a crisis in belief. So that can come up for people, especially with Mercury and Saturn being involved and pulling in the Jupiter energies and the Sag energies that are going on this week. It's really, it can be this feeling that something's not true for you, but you're being taught that it has to be true. And so in this last quarter, it can either be like holding on to something or the absolute need to liberate from it. And you get to pick, what do you want to do? Do you want to restructure and dissolve, or do you want to hold on and feel disillusioned? Like it's kind of this vibe that can go on. And then on the 19th, Venus will square Saturn's ruler Neptune in a last quarter square. So this week, really, the last quarter square, anyone that has this will definitely feel the function of absolute hold on or absolute rebellion. Um, I have Mercury in a last quarter square to my moon. My Mercury's in Capricorn. And I can tell you, my life has been about absolute rebellion to what I've been taught to believe. That would be like my Mercury and Capricorn in the ninth house. That's been projected onto me. Um, and lessons in self-abandonment through uh, wanting to throw that off, but then trying to be what people wanted me to be, and then all of a sudden feeling disillusioned, and the whole cycle of internal abandonment going on. This is more about the need to totally, absolutely rebel, right? This is on the heels, the day before Pluto enters Aquarius. This is about total rebellion against old beliefs that have affected us, especially our relationship to self, that then affects how we do relationship with other people. This is really about the need to act on understanding more universal and timeless values and needs instead of holding on to delusional beliefs that have perpetuated crisis and disillusionment in our lives. And this is really seen on a collective level. On a collective level, this can also be a little bit about propaganda and the need to understand the delusions of the nature of the things that we take in, that on a collective level we're valuing, or the delusional beliefs that we need to do certain things with natural resources in order to survive, that really are about hurting and creating more trauma to the earth, Uranus and Taurus ruled by this Venus. So there's this need to absolutely rebel against this type of status quo of what are your beliefs, what do you give meaning to, how has that affected you, and the need to act on initiating a dissolving process and then understanding what more natural values and needs are. So how we can help the collective is community comes together when community does their own personal work and then helps others do the personal work too through being a mirror of that. That would be Aquarius Leo, the mirror, the projected mirror of what it looks like. Okay. And that means that we still need to do our Saturnian work, and Neptune is the ruler of Saturn. So to really understand how our consciousness operates, or at the very least, understanding and looking at our ideals and where they come from and how they've affected us on personal and collective levels, and the need to dissolve that. So as Venus squares Neptune in a last quarter square, Pluto and the Sun are going to come together at 29 degrees Capricorn. This can really illuminate these dynamics of how we've structured. So it can illuminate and expose the Sun and Pluto, exposing and illuminating. And there is a need to, on a collective soul level and a personal soul level, to self-actualize through being integral, through having the willingness to expose these things within ourselves, and then to self-reflect, and then to liberate. Mercury is also going to be in a disseminating trine to Jupiter as this is happening. And so this can really offer us this information and deep insight through our own intuition and inner listening about what it is that we need to learn about how to be a better societal member, or what it means to be our own authority through living authentically and to use that information that we can grasp about ourselves or come to understand as a way to start to create a new foundation for ourselves, a new place to step onto. And then on the 20th, we have Pluto enter the sign of Aquarius, conjunct the sun in Aquarius. That really speaks to it's go time. What do you need to liberate from? What is creating trauma within you? What is bothering you? Your relationship to yourself, Uranus and Taurus. What feelings and emotional dynamics do you need to objectify in order to liberate and rebel from them, against them? Uranus is still going to be, well, Uranus is going to be in conjunct the South Node. Both are Venus ruled, and Venus is still going to be square Neptune at this time. So it's like, how do you become the person that you need? How do you become self-reliant? How do you do that through objectifying your inner reality? How do you transform your relationship to yourself? If you're someone who is wanting to create a more spiritual or develop a more spiritual relationship, all you have to do is understand that the door is open within inside yourself. And then to start at that point and expand upon that. Mars is quintile to the South Node in a crescent phase. And so this is really about understanding more of the past and what we've been reflecting on, and the need to continue to do it, and the need to start putting that into action, into place. Mars, Capricorn. So this transit really speaks to a time of self-liberation and of new crystallizations that can be formed within ourselves, that create new structures and new foundations, that alter how we inwardly relate to ourselves. It alters our own inner vibration, who we call into our lives, who's our community, who feels like our tribe, and doing this work on independent personal levels actually helps to transform the whole as more and more people come into the awareness and get on the same page, which that can be through crisis or trauma later on down the road. But for right now, it's like, for some of us, it doesn't have to get there. We can just start to consciously do this now. And it's really important, and I've said this before, especially with Pluto being ruled by Uranus and Taurus, to make sure that you pay attention to the repeating thoughts that come up about what direction or what action or which way you're supposed to go. It kind of foretells the future. Uranus is our higher mind. It's also the unconditioned, the long-term memory. And so there can be a lot of things that we can access right now that can help us with transforming our relationship to self, which then ultimately helps us to transform the collective. This is being a bit Pollyanna about it, but at some point, something's got to give. So this is the starting point of that. This whole next year will be really interesting for all of us to look at. I'm not going to get too ahead of myself at the end of this video with Pluto and Aquarius, because I am going to be posting the video on my own personal YouTube channel where me and two other astrologers, Rav Shahal and Stacey Pizzura, talk about Pluto throughout this whole year. And I don't want to oversaturate you guys with this. But I think it's important for us to remember that this is like a passing of the baton. It's a slingshot moment. When I think of Uranus and Aquarius, I think of the jackhammer. You can come in and take one blow, like, and it's, you know, forever changes the foundation. And you don't even know until years down the road what that initial impact did, what cracks spread, or what it did to the sediment underneath. And that is this moment that we're coming upon right now, is we can have these really Uranian jackhammer moments that come in to break things up for us, and necessarily so. Okay, it's not a suffer type of deal, it's an evolutionary type of deal, and it doesn't always have to be traumatizing. Sometimes it can just be new information that downloads to you, and all of a sudden your mind is expanded, seeing as all of this energy with Jupiter and Venus is really you know it, there's an ease of energy to a lot of it. If we work with it, it's mutable. So whatever comes to you, whatever ideas or things that you feel have a purpose and they've repeated more than 4 times out of seemingly nowhere, that's a turn you want to lean into. That is something that's emanating from your soul, and it's whispering from inside of the depths saying, go this way, go this way. Here's your north star, you know. So pay attention to that and make sure that you really ground into yourself, into your body. This um, can be intense for some on the nervous system. And so really making sure that you're taking care of your health. I know that that has been on my mind a lot lately, with the things that I've been going through, really wanting to, I'm getting more into my Virgo cap stuff, but really wanting to implement um, things that are practical, that are helpful. And this does pull in the energy of the polarity of Saturn and Neptune, seeing as it's Virgo, that, you know, there are things that you can do that help to ground, especially whenever we're going internally and there's a lot going out externally. So I want you all to have a beautiful week, and I will be back here again next week. There will be a full moon happening in the sign of Leo, I believe. I should know this, but it just slipped out of my mind. And like I said, I'm going to be posting this video that goes over this year with Pluto going back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn. And I'm doing it with 2 amazing astrologers who are brilliant in their own right, and who I get to call dear friends as well. So I will see you all next week.